I am currently in Abu Dhabi. I was a guest of Sheikh Mohammed. I am no longer a guest. I am a prisoner. They told me not to leave. I am afraid that anything could happen to me, and the people of Qatar would be blamed. So I just want to inform you that if anything happens to me, the people of Qatar are innocent. I am a guest of Sheikh Mohammed, and if anything happens to me after this, he is fully responsible.
That was Sheikh Abdullah bin Ali Thani claiming he's being held against his will in Abu Dhabi. The Qatari royal emerged as an important figure in the midst of the GCC crisis, and some tout him as a future Qatari leader. So as you can imagine, his alleged detention is raising some eyebrows. The UAE, however, denies he's being held at all and says he's free to go whenever he wants. But that's not the only point of contention between the two. Earlier this week, Qatar was accused of sending fighter jets to intercept 2 Emirati commercial flights. But Doha says that's completely false. We're now into the 8th month of the GCC dispute and still without a solution in sight. Well, to discuss this, I'm joined from London by Andreas Krieg. He's an assistant professor in the Department of Defence Studies at King's College and a consultant to the UK Defence Academy. And in Beirut, we have Riyad Kahwaji. He's the director of the Institute of Near East and Gulf Military Analysis. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Andreas, let's begin with you. If the Qataris did in fact do this, was it a bad mistake to intercept Emirati commercial jets?
I think there is no discussion at this point that, or any doubt that the Qataris were involved in were actually involved in this. It's quite clear they weren't involved in this. It would have been a mistake, but it doesn't make any sense to think that Qatar would take such steps, considering that Qatar at the moment, the main narrative that Qatar is trying to bring out is that they are very much in conforming with IATA regulations. So it would be against these regulations and against the freedom of using this airspace. And Qatar has made sure from the beginning, despite any actions taken against Qatar, Qatar does not want to and doesn't intend to retaliate. So it doesn't make any sense. I don't think Qatar was involved in this.
Okay, so Andreas, has the UAE lied about it?
Yes, I think it's part of this wider war over narrative that's been going on in the Gulf for the past 8 months, and it doesn't seem to be there doesn't seem to be any end in sight. We're not talking about diplomatic issues. We're not talking about interest. We're not talking about problems and issues that can be solved. We're talking about a war over narratives, which is purely fueled by alternative facts. And I think this is where the big problem is, because you can't really contain it. Because Qatar comes with a very well evidenced and substantiated claim and goes to the UN, and the UAE can accept it and retaliate with a fake news story such as this one.
Okay, so Riyadh, is the UAE using fake news as information war against the Qataris?
I don't think anybody can say anything right now, regardless of who he is, unless this goes to in front of international a body that will see the evidence from both sides and then will make the final declaration on what's true, what's not. I don't think it is in anybody's, nobody in any position right now, neither I nor anybody else, to just come out and say, well, Qatar was right or Emirates was right and who is lying or is not lying. Right now, we have one country saying one thing, another saying the another. Both will have to take it forward to the international organization, the IATA or UN, whoever, to see the evidence from both sides and then state a verdict.
Okay, so let me ground the jets for a moment and ask about the Sheikh. This one perhaps has a bit more grounds to stand on. So you have Sheikh Abdullah bin Ali Thani. He was primed by the Saudi camp, the Emirati camp, and others saying this is a potential future leader and he might replace Sheikh Tamim. He's come out with a video, Riyadh, saying, listen, I'm a prisoner, I'm not a guest here. What's going on? Why are they holding him as a prisoner?
I don't know. The guy, I heard him earlier, a few weeks ago, saying that he made declarations against Qatar. Now he is making another statements. I think this figure's credibility is in question right now as to what he wants, what was his intentions a couple months back, and right now what he's saying. So we didn't know anything about this guy before. he proclaimed, declared that he could be in line for, for the throne in Qatar, and the Qatari ruler was not doing the right things, and was criticizing him. And now, today, he comes out with this video about him being a prisoner. This is a guy who has a very questionable credibility, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so Andreas, does he have a credibility gap here? Is the guy dodgy?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, Sheikh Abdullah has been very much abused in his personality. Also, you know, he was living in London. He's a businessman. He's apolitical. He never had any ambitions within Qatar to aspire for any political change. But he has been, used in this war over narratives. The UAE and Saudi have kind of groomed him to be an alternative to Sheikh Tamim, the Emir of Qatar. And I think this has been going on in September last year, and it failed. The entire war over narratives failed. It didn't really get any traction, neither in the Gulf nor in the wider world. And now they realize that he is dispensable. And I think there's never been any statement by him saying that he wants to be a part of any opposition movement. He's just been instrumentalized all the way throughout, and pressure was put upon him to basically go and follow the Saudi line. He never himself, out of his own ambition, tried to make any such claims. So it just clearly shows again that when they can't use them anymore for wars over narratives, especially the UAE and Saudi, if they can't use their characters anymore, they just try to get rid of them.
Okay, so Riyadh, we mentioned the Sheikh, we mentioned the jets. We're following up on the story 8 months on. At the beginning, Saudi Arabia, the UAE and their allies hoped to squeeze Qatar into making concessions or into changing its behavior. They were clear about what they wanted to do. 8 months on, are we at a point where we can all concede that the Qataris have been able to ride the storm and that they have options, they have friends, and the isolation and blockade has failed?
I think, from day on, when I was asking people in the region and the 4 countries that led this boycott against Qatar about the time span, the duration. And they told me it's an open thing, an open-ended. They never put an exact date how long this is gonna be, and as far as they're concerned, it's gonna take as long as it needs to take, so that they will achieve their objectives. So right now, I don't hear many officials talking about it. They are busy with other issues, but when this comes up for them, this is now a daily routine thing, a policy that will stay in place until it serves its objective.
And Andreas, will the Qataris eventually cave, or are they in the clear now?
Nobody's in the clear, and I think the Saudi, Emirati, the blockading countries have made it quite clear that they're willing to sustain this indefinitely until objectives are being achieved. What these objectives are really remains in the open. Nobody really knows what needs to be achieved. The Qataris made it clear they're willing to negotiate, but from the other side, there is absolutely no rapprochement towards the Qataris. So at this point, we're in a stalemate that seems to be dragging out on and on and on, and I don't see any solution to this anytime soon. So instead of going about it diplomatically, I think especially the blockading countries are trying to fuel this war of a narrative to keep it going, but in the real diplomatic sense, in the diplomatic realm, I think nothing is actually happening. They don't really make any effort to bring this even on the agenda, because they say it's a non-issue. We have more difficult things, more important things, more pressing things to deal with, and the Qatar thing is something that we can accept the way it is. We'll accept the status quo and move on, because we don't want to deal with Qatar that has a foreign, with its own foreign and security policy.
Right, so very finally, Riyadh, very simply, we're running out of time. Any reconciliation or mediation efforts dead for the moment?
I know many parties, the Americans, the Europeans, have tried and possibly still trying behind the scenes, but I don't see any tangible results, any visible outcome so far. I think I see both camps still, each one entrenched to their positions. So I'm afraid it's going to be quite a while before we see any resolution to this conflict.
Okay, we're not going to solve the GCC crisis anytime soon, certainly not on this show. Andreas Krieg and Riyad Kahwaji, thanks so much for your insight here on the Newsmakers.
Thank you.